a combination of luck and just an incredible team that was able to grind through some of the toughest times, I think.
And you were CEO during all of this.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That is hard. Like as you were saying the story, obviously knowing that Clutch still exists, but as you were saying the story, I'm like, yeah, these guys are screwed. Like they're done. They're gonna go bankrupt because that's typically what happens.
Yeah, our competitor did go bankrupt. A lot of folks in the growth space in Canada went bankrupt or no longer exist.
I know we were talking about DoorDash. I think DoorDash is still unprofitable to this day. That's the last I had heard. Like a couple of years ago, it was still unprofitable.
I think if they're not, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think their market cap's probably north of 150 billion.
Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast where we dive into thoughtful conversations and insightful discussions with world-class people, all with the aim of inspiring, educating, and empowering our listeners.
We are thrilled to have you here with us on this exciting journey to explore the diverse stories and the ideas that have the power to shape the world for the better.
Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast.
Our guest today is a leader whose career journey spans from a world of investment banking to redefining the car buying as a two-sided marketplace in Canada. As a CEO of Clutch, he has transformed the traditional used car market into a seamless online experience, making car buying as easy as ordering takeout. Prior to Clutch, he played a pivotal role in scaling Uber Eats across Canada, showcasing his knack for innovation in the tech-driven consumer space. With a foundation primarily in finance and a passion for disrupting established industries, his story is one of adaptability, forward-thinking leadership that we are excited to dive into. Welcome to Growth Untold, Dan Park.
Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for coming on, man.
This is great.
We have a lot. We have a little bit in common in that we're both Canadians, but spent a lot of time in the U.S.
That's right.
So you spent a lot of time in San Francisco, I'm assuming because Silicon Valley and Texas and New York. So tell us a little bit about that. Actually, before you dive into that, your origins of Canada. Are you an immigrant? Are your parents immigrants?
My parents are immigrants. They moved to Toronto back in 1977.
Wow.
But then my dad, who was an architect, had the opportunity to go on a project up in the Northwest Territories.
Okay.
And so I was born in Yellowknife. So when you think of a stereotypical Canadian, maybe you don't.
From Yellowknife?
Well,
not you.
If you look at me, probably not. But my background, we grew up, hunting, fishing.
Wow.
I know how to build an igloo. We spent a lot of time outside in the north, and I grew up there, graduated high school there.
Where's your dad and your parents immigrate from?
From Korea.
Okay, all right.
So Korean immigrants back in the 70s. Korea was a very different place back then. And so I grew up spending a lot of time outside. It was minus 40 pretty regularly.
That's minus 40 Celsius, guys, for our American
Celsius
viewers?
and Fahrenheit actually converge, and so it's the same.
Really?
Yeah. It's at
I
minus
didn't
40,
know that.
it converges.
So at minus 40 exactly, it converges.
Almost, yeah, I think it's exactly.
Wow.
So it's the same temperature, both in Fahrenheit. So it's a very
It's a universal cold
metric,
temperature.
Yeah, exactly. But my best friend, when I was in elementary school, had a dog sled team. I grew up cross-country skiing.
These are like the stereotypes that everybody thinks about Canada when you're like, I know how to build an igloo, and people are like,
when you go to the U.S., you're like,
kidding.
oh, do you know Joe from wherever, and do you know how to do dog sled all the time? And the answer is, up there at least, it's yeah.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but it's certainly common.
So you went to elementary school, high school there, or like what?
Yeah, graduated high school,
Yeah.
and then actually moved to Ecuador afterwards.
Wow, why?
So
you were like, I want the exact opposite climate now, so I'm going to Ecuador.
I really wanted to learn Spanish, and I wanted to go to South America, something different. I think I kind of retired from cross-country skiing at that point. I never grew past 5'7", so it was hard as at that height to be a competitive cross-country skier, and so.
I feel you, man. I wanted to play basketball. I was like, for a long time, I was like, if I put my head down, I could really be like, I could go far in basketball. And then I was like, I'm never gonna grow to be anywhere near tall enough.
You had a quick like I don't
had a
know.
good
you had
left hand, man.
You had a growth spurt in like grade 7 and 8. You were the tallest guy for like
you
one
say
summer.
that? I don't remember.
You
So I've known
were.
Alex since we went to elementary school
Right,
together.
yes.
I don't remember this,
You
but
don't remember,
we were definitely around the same height.
No.
And then Alex, and you got massive. He was thin because he was a cross country runner.
Right.
So he was very thin, and then he just
and
got
then
big.
and then I
all of a
got
sudden.
fat.
Getting big isn't helpful for the endurance sports, though. You want to stay lean.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
So
Yeah.
Doesn't go.
And how long did you spend in Ecuador?
a year, just over a year. I
Okay.
went to high school. I did another year of high school there just to learn Spanish. I was in south of Quito at a public school, like a public military focused school.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I mean, we got there was a lot of like rivalries between some of the schools, and kids would throw tear gas into classrooms, and there'd be like West Side Story type like brawls after school. It was
healthy.
it was back in 1997, so a lot of areas of South America were going through a lot of change. I think there was like extreme hyperinflation and political regimes being toppled. So it was a really interesting time back then. But I was fully fluent in Spanish by the time I left.
Wow.
And then went to Montreal for school. And then that's
Back to the cold.
Well, back to the cold and back to Canada. And after that, spent a year in Toronto and then moved to New York.
Where'd you go? What school?
I went to McGill.
McGill, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
For business?
For business, yeah. Well, initially, I didn't really know. I mean, growing up in the North and my parents not having really, a lot of exposure to different careers, I went to school not really knowing what I was going to do. So I kind of just enrolled in a math degree.
Okay.
And then after the first year, I was like, what am I going to do with this math degree?
Right.
And a lot
Not
of
dog sledding. I can't do that.
Clearly not. Yeah. Although you have to count the number of dogs, I guess.
That's true. Which geometric shape is best for these dogs?
Yeah, I never did it competitively, but I mean, I had a friend growing up who actually competed in dog sled racing. Yeah, and I lived on a residence floor, and the floor fellow that kind of chose the people to be on the floor, I think the only reason she chose me was because I was from Yellowknife, and everyone else was in business because she was in business. And then so I got exposure to folks that were taking finance classes, marketing classes, and I said, this looks interesting, kind of feels like there's math here as well. And so I did a degree in economics and finance. And then enjoyed that, but really still didn't know what I was going to do with that degree. The careers that people kind of gravitated towards were completely foreign to me.
So how'd you fall into or get to Uber Eats? Like, what was the journey before?
Oh, there was a lot of steps before that, but
Just tell us a few of them.
Yeah, I mean, my first interview so a friend of mine did a summer internship at Goldman Sachs, and he was like the guy. He was one of those like the overachievers at school, and he was like, "Hey, like, you should interview." And I honestly had no clue what Goldman was.
Yeah.
And I went into that interview, and I don't think I've bombed an interview more than I bombed that interview. I had no idea. I sat on the other side interviewing people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, you know nothing about this company or this job. Like, why are you here? I was that guy.
Wow.
I was that guy that made a complete fool of himself because I had no idea. I had no idea what the company really did. I mean, I was so naive at the time. Like,
Right.
I had no clue.
Safe to say you didn't get that
I
job.
did not get that job. But it was a swift kick in the butt, right?
And
'Cause
it's very competitive. I mean,
It's
that's
super-
like
yeah, yeah.
everybody's,
Yeah.
every finance guy's dream was to get into
I had no
Goldman
idea. I had no
Sachs.
idea. But it was very embarrassing. And I said, I don't want to feel like that again. So I studied, and it was an interesting time because I was recruiting in 2001, September of 2001, right? So this was like right after 9/11.
Yeah.
And so there were no jobs on Wall Street, right? Anyone who had a job on Wall Street got that job rescinded. And so I got super lucky, studied and, made sure that embarrassing moment never happened again. And I got a job on Bay Street for a year. And then things started to settle down, and that's when I moved. So I was like, well, I'm going to do banking, would be pretty cool to do that on Wall Street. And so moved to the U.S. In late 2004, early 2005, and did 3 years.
Which a few years later was also a tough time with.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was getting better back then.
But I mean, the housing crash, 2007, 2008.
Yeah, like the financial crisis was 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
But between kind of 2004 to 2007,
Prime time.
It was it was kind of like on the up again.
Yeah.
A lot of deals were getting done. There was a lot of M&A activity, and so it was a great learning experience for me. I learned a lot about business generally, and I was a little bit less naive than I was at least starting.
Yeah.
And felt like, and then went to business school after that. And so I went to business school
After that.
Yeah. So I did an MBA.
Interesting. What prompted that?
It's kind of the traditional path a lot of people take.
Oh, really?
So you do a couple of years of work, and then you go into, and you do, an MBA.
What were the places you worked?
Sorry?
Or were the places you
Oh,
worked?
I worked at Deutsche Bank back then,
okay.
and so it was BMO and then Deutsche Bank, and then went to do my MBA, and that's when I got a lot of exposure. That was so I got accepted in 2007, and in early 2008, I remember being like in New York. That's when like Bear Stearns went under, and Lehman Brothers went under. I had already gotten acceptance into business school, which I was like,
that was kind of prime time.
Yeah, that was
timed
luck.
that perfectly.
Yeah, that was I think that I look back on that, and some people are like, wow, that was really like smart.
Yeah.
That was
worked
smart.
up until the peak, and then went to business school for the crash.
Sometimes it's just better to be lucky, and I think that was luck in terms of that timing.
And so you got your MBA also in New York. You stuck around
No, I
in
went
New
to
York?
Philadelphia. So I
Went
went
to Philly.
to the Wharton School, which is in the University of Pennsylvania.
Big business school. Yeah.
And that's where I got a lot of exposure to startups, to tech, because a lot of typically and historically it's known as a finance school. But a lot of the finance jobs had evaporated because of the crisis. Again, like 2001 was that time, 2008 was that time. So I kind of bookended like my schooling with probably some of the worst times in at least corporate finance.
Yeah.
And so I got really into tech. A lot of out of my class, a lot of really interesting tech companies and innovative companies got built because there were just not a lot of finance jobs.
Right.
And so that's where I started venturing into venture capital. And I really wanted to get closer. Banking is great because you learn a lot about the business and you learn a lot about transactions and deal making, but you're still very removed from the operating and the building of a business. You do the transaction and you kind of wash your hands of it and you move on. And I really wanted to build something. And so venture for me from finance seemed like the closest thing. So if you look at hedge funds and private equity and venture capital, hedge funds and public equity is pretty far removed from, being involved with the company. Then private equity, you own the company, but venture capital, you're on the boards and you're spending a lot of times with the entrepreneurs helping them build. And I thought that was really appealing.
Right.
And it was one of the best jobs I've had. It was really great. Really got close to entrepreneurs. Some of my closest friends are some of the folks that I met and invested in. Okay. They've gone to do pretty cool things. And so, that really drew to me, and I felt like that was good, but I wanted to be even closer. That's when Uber came up, and so that's when Uber was founded in 2009, and then in 2015, Travis Kalanick, who was the founder, kind of started asking questions. And Uber Rides was established as a business back then, and then he started asking, "Hey, if I can get a car to you in 5 minutes, what else can I deliver to you?" And we started experimenting around a bunch of random things like, pharmacy, shampoo, toilet paper, food, packages. So we did a lot of experiments and found a signal around food. So it turns out people really wanted food on demand. And that food delivery was kind of disrupting kind of traditional restaurants and
pizza delivery.
Pizza delivery. I mean, the only way back then really was just pizza delivery, and then you call the restaurant and they might have a guy.
They might
have
if
a
not,
guy.
It was takeout.
Right. When I was in university, there was a guy named Mikey that would bring up chicken Caesar wraps.
I love
to the
Mikey.
dorm. Right.
I love that guy. Yeah.
So it wasn't
a thing. It was just pizza delivery.
That's right.
Really, that was it.
Exactly. Right. And there were some websites where they aggregated some of those folks that actually would do their own delivery, but it wasn't like a three-sided marketplace where we had drivers driving around, picking up food and delivering it instantaneously, but pretty much instantaneously to your house, right? That it was a pretty new thing. And the first iteration of Uber Eats was really, it was in the Rides app. You click a button, and you had a choice of 5 different things, like whether it was like a pad thai or a burger or like a sub or something. That's what you got delivered. That was the only choice. But we found a lot of interesting data around that experiment to give us confidence that there was like a real business here. And that Uber Eats kind of story actually started here in Toronto. The original version of the app was here, and some of the first deliveries were here. And from then, the business kind of exploded. One of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing business after Uber Rides back then, and it scaled incredibly quickly globally.
Wow.
And then now there's a few others. DoorDash has done an incredible job in the U.S. and there's global players, but it's been kind of a journey on the food delivery side.
Why was Toronto chosen as the pilot?
I think it's. I always like to joke that it was like that. If you did it in Canada and it failed, then the U.S. headquarters could be like, oh, that was some crazy thing that the Canadians did and sweep it under the rug. Right. So I think there's like some safety and failure there.
But also Toronto's
a great market. Yeah, great food scene.
Multicultural.
Multicultural.
Right?
Yeah. Some of the best restaurants in the world. Right.
Not as busy as New York when it comes to cars and stuff. Like I feel like starting this kind of program in New York would be like just insane because like traffic and cars and parking. Toronto's almost kind of a nice medium.
Yeah, happy medium. I think there's the consumers would be pretty similar to some in the US. And so I think there's it's a good place to test at scale. And turns out it worked out really well. And so this Toronto has a pretty special place in the history of Uber Eats, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
A lot of leadership around the globe actually has had some experience in Toronto, and so that was like I think as a proud Canadian, cool to see.
Yeah. And ghost kitchens weren't a thing back then. That was all after the advent of Uber Eats and delivery services, and then ghost kitchens became a thing.
Yeah, and it exploded during the pandemic, and food delivery generally exploded during the pandemic. And thankfully I was gone before that. But
which is crazy to think because you said Uber Eats Toronto, 2015?
2016 to 2019.
So and then it boomed, I guess, during the pandemic.
And we signed McDonald's, we signed Starbucks, we got A&W, and that was a pretty contentious decision to get some of these fast food players on the app. I think there was this belief that people wouldn't want fast food on demand, right? It was like, okay, I can get it through the drive-through. Why would I need that delivered? And it turns out people really wanted it, and as soon as we lit up McDonald's, like in every geography, it was one of the some of the locations were all like top 10.
Crazy.
So people. Turns out people do want fast food on demand.
What was your title at Uber Eats?
I was the GM and the head of Canada.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you oversaw like operations, you oversaw a lot of different things.
So we had about 200 people in Canada across sales, marketing, operations, restaurant success. And so we had, a lot of the levers here in Canada, which I think is unique. A lot of the satellite offices of large global companies, it's usually just sales and marketing, but we had full operations and customer experience on the team, which was great because it allowed us to scale quickly. It allowed us to react to different changes in the market and to provide actually a better experience to both customers but also restaurants.
So what were some of your challenges that you had since you were head of Canada? You had oversight over every single vertical. I'm assuming like quality assurance, speed of delivery.
Yeah, all of that.
Factors.
I think I developed a really high sense of respect for McDonald's. They're just so good.
Just the Motown machine of getting product out there.
It's just, and the consistency and how much they're focused on like every second is really impressive. I would say I learned a lot from that team. They're just incredibly good operators. A lot of them have been there for 25, 30 years.
Are McDonald's still, are they franchisees or no? They're all corporate?
There's a combination of both.
There is a combination, okay.
Yeah, there's some large franchise groups, but there's also some corporate-owned stores as well.
Okay.
But I think it's mostly franchised at this point.
Okay.
But
so
they have
across the board, they're just amazing.
Yeah, they're just very good. Operationally and in terms of execution, they're quite good and focused on just like delivering a consistent experience to consumers. You go. It's amazing how you go to anywhere in Canada or anywhere in North America and you get a pretty consistent experience.
Yeah, that's hard, man. That's a lot harder than people think it is.
At scale, I think just doing anything at scale. We were doing about 1 million deliveries a week. Just in Canada.
1 million deliveries a week
in Canada, right? Which is a lot, right? And so we'll put that in perspective, right? That means every week there's some crazy 1 in a million event, right? Potentially.
And it never came from McDonald's.
But there's crazy. I've never. People get so angry. Now I'm. We'll probably get into this later, but we deliver cars to individuals and we sell cars online. The angriest customer in car delivery is nowhere close to the angriest customer in food delivery. And you're talking about a $25 purchase versus like a $25,000 purchase.
Yeah.
But man, people get pretty angry if they don't get their burger or their
because they're already hangry.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you mess it up and it's just it goes into overdrive.
Like we got death threats because someone was super angry about their order and something happened and it's hard to control every time. And so 1 million deliveries means that for every delivery there's at least 2 human interactions, right? It's the customer who's ordering the food with the driver and the driver with the restaurant. And so you've got 2 million human interactions happening every week, which that means like anytime 2 humans get together, 2 million times, like there's potential conflict, right?
Yes.
And particularly if that person's in a rush and that person wants food
100%.
and like there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Having a bad day, whatever.
Whatever. I mean, people are people, right? So I think managing that at scale I think you learn a lot from that and trying to develop the processes and systems to be able to handle that kind of scale. Was a super important lesson for me, at least.
That's an insane experience. And then did you, I would think that as GM doing all that, you could have very well said, I'm going to just stick it out with this company and see how high up the ladder I could go. Was there a specific reason you decided to pivot and shift?
Yeah,
or
I probably had another year of building that I wanted to do at Uber. But the next step for me was to go to probably end up back in San Francisco.
Yeah, back
and made a conscious decision with my family to move back to Canada. My wife's Canadian, and we just had our first son back then. And the thought of moving back to the U.S. wasn't super appealing. And there's lots. I mean, there's things to do in Canada, and I think things to build here. And
100%.
Got a phone call from someone I met in my VC days. And he called me up and said, "Hey, you should, you're delivering food. Maybe you should deliver cars instead." And I was like, "I don't know if those are the same thing, but I will take a look." And I kind of put my VC hat on and looked at the business, which was founded by Steve Seibel, who's now a really close friend of mine.
I've heard that name before.
Yeah, he's founder of Clutch. We spent a lot of time together.
Okay. Did he do anything? Did he found anything before Clutch?
No, it was pretty early. He started the business when he was 24.
Wow.
So it was pretty young when he started it. And so I have a few gray hairs. So he wanted someone with a couple of gray hairs to come on board and help him out. But I looked at the business with that VC lens, and it seemed crazy to me that in Canada there was no retail brand for used car sales. If you think about,
Carvana, there was no Carvana.
or not even Carvana, CarMax. Right, CarMax started in '92. CarMax,
yes.
Right? Well, Carvana, is the more digital iteration.
Yeah,
but
CarMax is the one I see everywhere in the States.
Yeah, and
I sold my old car to them.
Yeah, and they're great. They have a great customer experience. They're big. They're one of the largest. They're the largest retailer of cars in the U.S. They were started back in '93, actually, out of Circuit City. I don't know if you know this, but they were an experiment out of the parking lots of Circuit City.
Wow.
Circuit City no longer exists. It was a large retailer for electronics now. CarMax is a thing.
It was like Radio Shack here,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But it seemed crazy to me that there was no brand, right? Like super fragmented. It's a massive purchase. And what do you want from a brand? You want something that you can trust. You want consistency of experience, right? Used cars, every used car is different. I always say used cars, every used car is its own special snowflake, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can have 2 Toyota Camrys from 2020, but, and the same color, but, different features. Someone might have driven it differently if they're used, like different mileage. So every car is different, but yet there was no retail standard for used cars in Canada, and nowhere you could go in Toronto and Calgary and Vancouver and get that same experience. Very localized. If you ask, any random person where they go and buy a used car, they'd be like, I don't know. I'd go find a car on one of the listing sites,
Right.
or I'd go, meet a stranger.
My
in a parking
mechanic,
lot,
or
I
go to
don't
my
know, who knows?
mechanic and ask them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like a weird, archaic way to do business in 2020. At the time, it was 2020. You're ordering food online, you're watching movies, streaming. We were talking earlier about like how your industry has changed and how a lot of it's virtual, but yet like you're still buying cars in the same way as you were in like 1950, right? Like you go into a dealership, you meet some guy, and you negotiate for a price for that car, and then and who knows if that car is up to any reasonable standard, and then you drive away, and if you have a problem, you have to call the mechanic. It's a weird. It was a weird way to be buying and selling cars.
So how does this differentiate? And apologies if it's ignorance, but how does this differentiate from like eBay Autos or Kijiji Autos and Turo and Auto Trader? Like I'm noticing there's quite a few. They're all probably a little different.
So that I would call those, like a lot of these listing sites, kind of the V1 of marketplaces, and a lot of these marketplaces have moved to a more what we'd call managed marketplace, right? And managed marketplace is where a company takes some degree of risk to provide more value to the customer.
Right.
And so our risk is that we actually buy every car and own that in inventory, right?
Auto Trader doesn't do that.
Auto Trader is a listing site. It connects
Consumer to
consumers to
consumer.
dealerships or consumers to consumers, right?
Okay,
And we own the vehicle. We take
Right.
inventory. So we buy today about $2 million worth of cars every single day.
Wow, and you take on the risk.
We take on the risk. So we basically, you go on our website and you put in some pretty high level information about your vehicle, and we will give you an instant cash offer for that car. And so you can take that offer, you can bring it to a dealership and be like, hey, Clutch will offer me this, or you can redeem it with us. We'll come and either pick up the car, or you can drop it off. But it allows customers a really we've seen people leave the country, and on the way out, they will schedule an appointment before their flight, drop off the car, and take an Uber to the airport as they're leaving the country for maybe they were here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You can't do there's no other way to do that today, right? Like you can't, if you're going to list it on one of these listing sites, you got to you have to either invite them to your home, which is somewhat sketchy, or you meet them at the local coffee shop, and you have them look at your car. You try to negotiate a deal with some guy you never met, and then maybe that person will follow through, and maybe they won't, and you have to meet 10 people.
Yeah.
You can't
It's
do
a
that before
pain in the
you can't do
ass.
that before your flight, right? And then otherwise you go to a dealership. Who knows what kind of experience you're going to get there, because they're all different. Some are great, some are not.
Yeah.
They're just 8,000 dealerships in Ontario alone.
I love that. I feel like what it reminds me of, and it's a little different. We brought it up in our previous guest. Like what StockX does is they have an inventory, but there's a StockX. There's a badge, a green badge of approval that they did the quality check, the check that they're real Jordans. They're putting their brand on the line.
Yep.
And once you get that, you're like, oh, okay, this is real.
But
authentic.
StockX, you're still buying shoes from another person,
100% you are. But what I'm trying to say, it reminds me of, you're taking much more risk. What I'm trying to say is that they have this quality assurance protocol that they have checked to ensure that it's legitimate. Because one of the biggest problems in the the shoe sector and fashion space is that people are selling out fake J's all the time.
Yeah,
knockoffs.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. So it's probably you feel incredibly trusted. If I'm a consumer right now and I go to Clutch, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
These people have bought the car, meaning it's their money. So I know for a fact that I'm buying something.
Well, not only that, so we buy the car,
legitimate.
and from there, we've actually built massive facilities that allow us to recondition the car. So we refurbish every vehicle. So we put it through a 210-point inspection. We have mechanics. We have teams of mechanics, inspectors, detailers that will go through the car and put it up to our standard. And this is kind of like that McDonald's analogy that I kind of alluded to before. I talk about the Big Mac, right? The Big Mac, comes with, 2 all beef patties, special sauce, pickle, bun, right? You go to different burger places, you're gonna get a different kind of burger. But if you come here, you know exactly what you're getting, right? There's a standard for every part of the vehicle that we will meet and exceed. It exceeds all kind of state provincial safety standards, but we have our own Clutch standard to ensure that every car, whether you get it here or Halifax or Vancouver, it's all going to be the same. And that's what you should be getting as a consumer. And so you got that confidence that, we've done and we looked at that vehicle. And then from there, we can also offer a 10-day money back guarantee, right?
Wow.
So like that because we've done the work, then you can say, okay, well, we stand by that car. We think it's great. And our return rate's like 4%.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So did you guys basically take the CarMax model and implement it in Canada?
CarMax is more like, I think about CarMax being more like the Walmart of car buying. And then Carvana in the US is more like Amazon.
Okay.
So like CarMax is a much more of a physical retail experience, right?
Yes.
And if you did it, you had to go somewhere.
Yes.
Ours is
I had to go a
much
couple-
more.
I went a couple
Ours is
times.
digital, right? So we have less physical infrastructure, which allows us to pass on more savings to consumers, right? Because there's not as much real estate, and I think that's generally true. Like you drive down the Gardner, right? Like those dealerships are like $150, $200 million properties, right?
Yeah, it's more a real estate play than it is. Anything,
and that cost is getting borne on by the consumer, right? That cost has to go somewhere, and so you're paying for those facilities. But once you drive the car off the lot, I don't think you really care what the place really looked like, and so we deliver the car. So we will deliver the car to your door, or you can pick it up. But yeah, so there's some elements. Like we're certainly inspired by some of the things. CarMax has been around for almost 30 years or 32 years now. They've done some great things. We're inspired by CarMax. Carvana is the more digital model, and certainly they've inspired us as well. But I think the Canadian consumers are different. Canada as a geography is different, and so you can't perfectly lift anything from any country and try to like replicate it. I think that sometimes there's that famous example of Target trying to come in to Canada, right?
Failed miserably.
Failed miserably, right? They spent like $2 billion and didn't really regionalize it for the Canadian consumer, and made some mistakes on the way. But it's not perfectly translatable, right?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the raising funds at an expedited rate that you've done? Okay,
Yeah.
You did 20 million in Series A funding with this, like it seemed like in a matter of months, and 75 million Series B funding, basically, and then 100.
At what valuations?
Right, and 150 million you said in debt.
Yeah. So we've raised about 200 million in equity at this point, and about 150 million in debt.
And so, like, can you just walk us through, like, pretend like nobody has any knowledge of going into investor meetings? How were you able to express the value proposition, the gap, the fix, like all of this, and move this at such an expedited rate where it takes people years to raise that kind of funding?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of things, and I can walk through the arc a little bit. But 2020, 2021, it was an incredibly liquid time for investors. I mean, there was a lot of capital out there for investors, and particularly coming into the pandemic, there was a lot of liquidity, and so we got lucky in that sense because there's a lot of capital available. Capital available pretty low, like cheap, and so it was clear that the business model was working and the demand was there. I think we found product market fit really early. I think there's a need for this in Canada, and cars are a big market. It's second largest market after real estate in Canada. It's probably your either the largest or second largest purchase you'll make, and so buying and selling cars is something that Canadians always do and people always do. I think we found a really good product market fit, and as a result, kind of that accelerated our seed round. So allowed us to raise our seed round in early 2020. By the end of 2020, that's when we went through the pandemic. There was a period of time when we were still washing groceries and people thought they were never going to leave their house again. And so car sales actually plummeted to almost zero in May and June of that year. But then quickly thereafter, no one wanted to take an Uber, right? No one, because that was someone else in the car with you. No one wanted to take public transit. I think public transit ridership was down like 70%. Yeah. And everyone wanted a used car. Like everyone wanted. And so car prices spiked, and there was like this crazy frenzy of used cars. And
prices were great. I sold. I was.
Well, you could sell a car for more than you bought it.
Yes.
Right?
So I leased my car. I had an Audi at the time. I leased my Audi. I was leasing it, and then I went onto one of these retailers, or car sales, CarMax, and I got my instant quote, and I was like, wait, I can buy out my lease and instantly make $8,000.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I literally just bought out my lease, sent a check, and then went to CarMax and made $8,000.
Yeah, that was like
It was insane.
Car prices that were up, I think, 30 to 40% back then, right?
Yeah.
And cars were increasing in value. You know, you have a depreciating asset for the first time, at least that I know of. The car prices were increasing every month.
Yeah.
And so that fueled a lot of growth. I mean, it didn't make our margins better because we had to buy cars for a higher price, but it just demand was accelerated, and then people started getting more comfortable with buying things online. And so those things I think really helped kind of catalyze some of that momentum back in late 2020. And so we raised a Series A round. That was the $20 million Series A. At about like $100 million valuation back then. And then that momentum continued, right? It was like still super, and then capital continued to become available. And then my Series B, we raised that at the end of 2021, or like back half of 2021. And that was at a 5x valuation step up.
Wow.
And we raised 75 million. And it took like 3 weeks. And it was a crazy time. It was just a really crazy time. And
well, money was cheap. You were borrowing money at what, like 2% in the States? I don't know how much it was here, but like in the States, it was like 2%.
And growth was all that mattered. And there was a competitor, and the faster you grew, the more money you would get. The more money you get, the faster you grow. And it was kind of like a hamster wheel,
Snowball,
a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of need to continue that hamster wheel in order to survive, because we're burning cash at that point, right? Like we're losing money.
So speed's the name of the game here. You 25x revenue within like a few months, which is crazy. You've raised this much funding within 3 weeks. What are you doing right now as you continue this?
Yeah,
you're on a rocket ship.
I think
what are you doing
to
get more customers?
Well, I think it's worth just kind of talking about the next year for a bit, because as hot as it was, that came crashing down really quickly, right? 2022, cracks started showing, rates started going up. And capital effectively evaporated. So we built all of this infrastructure ahead of growth. I think we hired like 300 people in 6 months. And we were accelerating like crazy. I think we tripled revenue that year again. And then the first meeting, our investor, like that lead investor, came in and said, "Hey, look, like you're growing super quickly. Here's the 75 million. There's another 100 million behind this. Like, keep growing." And so we're like, let's go. And then within 3 months, that same investor came in and said, "There's no more money. I know you're burning like $5 million a month, but now you need to get profitable," right? And
which is so hard to do when you're prioritizing growth.
Exactly. And so we built all this infrastructure ahead of growth, right? And so now it's like, well, there's no more capital. That the playbook that was working for the last decade no longer worked, right? Like, the reason why, frankly, Uber even exists today is because we had a decade plus of
cheap money,
right? Yeah. And a lot of the other companies like Airbnb,
Uber didn't become profitable till just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, recently, right? And so that playbook worked when there was no capital, or when there was abundant cheap capital available. But now, in 2021, that all disappeared, and so we were forced to get profitable really quickly. And so we had to do some massive layoffs. We did that last round was like 500 million. The next one we did at like 15 million.
15.
Right. So,
Damn.
and we cut, we let go of 65. We went from 350 people at our peak to 87 people. And I remember getting, there's a whole longer probably narrative around this topic alone, but I remember we had a term sheet for a $95 million Series C round in the fall of 2022. We were about 3 weeks from closing, and it's a massive fund. It's $1 trillion. It's a huge fund. It's one of the largest funds in the world. And they called me on January 4th, and they said, "Hey, look, like, I know we're close to a deal here, but we're not feeling this anymore, and we're out." And so that was basically going to save the company. And then within 10 days, we had to orchestrate a 65% headcount layoff in order just to survive. And then we spent the next 2 years basically building. We hit profitability last year.
Wow, good for you.
Congratulations.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. And then we raised our last round back above our peak valuation.
Really?
So
you went from 500 to 15 back above 500.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Within 2 years.
The people that invested at 15 must be
they're
ecstatic.
They're ecstatic.
And the people at 500 are happy again.
Most of the people that were at the 500 doubled down.
Yeah, of course.
And so they've kind of dollar cost to
averaged, to what,
right?
like 250 or something, 220.
Yeah.
But still, my point is everybody's happy now, which is insanely difficult to do. Like I invest in companies too, and most of my investments in private companies do not go well. I'm going to call you from now on, but most of them don't go well because the reality is most private companies don't make it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a reality.
I mean, the startup failure rate is like 99%, right? Something
Yeah.
like that, right? So it's high. And so we got a combination of luck and just an incredible team that was able to grind through some of the toughest times, I think.
And you were CEO during all of this.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That is hard. Like as you were saying the story, obviously knowing that Clutch still exists, but as you were saying the story, I'm like, these guys are screwed. Like they're done. They're gonna go bankrupt because that's typically what happens.
Yeah, our competitor did go bankrupt. A lot of folks in the growth space in Canada went bankrupt or no longer exist.
I know we were talking about DoorDash. I think DoorDash is still unprofitable to this day. That's the last I had heard. Like a couple of years ago, it was still unprofitable.
I think if they're not, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think their market cap's probably north of 150 billion. So I think they're okay.
Yeah, they're fine. But
can we take a macro lens for a moment of the staying power of the peaks and valleys of raising funding, of losing funding, on the brink of bankruptcy, on the adaptability of being able to communicate your value prop while you're dealing with all of these economic pressures?
Yeah, I think you can only control what you can control, right?
Yeah.
And so during a lot of this time, it was a lot of the macro stuff precisely that was giving us the challenges. And so I think for us, the big takeaway that I've had is just speed. Speed in startups, speed matters so much, right? If you're burning, we were burning $5-6 million a month, which means that $200,000, we're burning $200,000 every day, right? So every day you have to wake up and be like, am I going to deliver $200,000 value somehow, right?
Wow.
And so I think speed, when time is not your friend, speed matters. And we were able to react quickly to really fast moving economic conditions, which I think helped us. I think the core of our business and the product was sound, and the customer experience we provide and deliver is exceptional, and so that continued to remain constant during this entire time. Mm-hmm. And I think through all of it, the resilience is the piece that matters, and the same team that has been with us like over the last 5 years is the same team that I have now.
Wow.
And we talk. I don't think there's enough analogies. We're talking about sports a little bit, but like enough analogies around sports and business. I know there's a lot, but like, having a team that's gone through a couple of these iterations, like I think about it being like playoff tested and championship tested, right? Like, a new team is inevitably going to have like, conflict. There's no trust between those two. They know how to it's like harder to run plays. So I think, having gone through these hard things together as a team just makes you better and gives you a lot of confidence to go tackle the next thing. And, when I was in VC, I never really spent a lot of time diligencing the team. I spent a lot of time, diligencing the founder and the CEOs, but like not the broader team. But actually what matters more is the team and how the team works together. And I think that's another takeaway, is that like you need to have a really good bench around the team. Otherwise, going through these kind of things is impossible by yourself.
Yeah, it's always about the strength of the team. I know we're close to time here, but this is a good segue on.
And I just want to say DoorDash is profitable. You're right. It's their first quarter profitable. Was their last quarter $162 million profit. So sometimes it takes a long time. That was like 10 years. They've been around for a long time.
Well, except if you're Dan Park, you make it
I know,
like
right?
That, right?
Dan Park, you just turn it all around.
Dan
Turn
Park
it
for Prime
around
Minister,
in 5
baby.
years.
We want to talk about, a lot of this podcast is inspiring next gen and inspiring people, who come from diverse backgrounds. What's a piece of advice? It's similar to what you're giving to entrepreneurs and the staying power of teamwork, resiliency. But what's a piece of advice you give to young Dan Park, who's, bushy-tailed, wide-eyed, trying to build something that you'd give to somebody today?
I would try to optimize for learning. I feel like I've tried to use that throughout my career, is just what's the best learning opportunity. Even though I went to some of these larger companies, I went early on in the group that was being, so even, I talked about investment banking. The group that I went into back in 2005 had just started up again, right? It was M&A back after the pandemic. A lot of the M&A groups, because there was, sorry, not after that, after 9/11, a lot of the M&A groups were kind of taken apart and dismantled because there was not a lot of M&A activity. And so this was like an effort to bring that group back together. And so getting in early just gives you a lot of opportunity, because I was like this low man on the totem pole, but because it was early, there weren't a lot of people. And so you were able to go to meetings, you were able to get, do deals by yourself, because they were just so early. Similar to Uber, Eats didn't exist. When I joined, I was the GM of Toronto, right? Because that's all that was. But then I had an opportunity to go build the rest of it, which allowed me to go. And, when they look around and you're like, you're the guy, whether you're the right guy or not, it's like, you're the guy that's in seat right now. I guess like you're going to take on the rest of this for at least for now. You just get those opportunities when you're early. And so I would say encourage people to go and get in early, even if it's at a large company and maybe they're taking on a new initiative, or maybe it's like a new group or a new market. I find those are the best opportunities to learn. And then through every stage, it's like, how does this thing build on my next thing? Like my experience in BC, incredibly helpful for fundraising and capital raising. And that's been a huge asset for me. And so taking all these combined experiences and leveraging that to something that, you have a vision for would be my advice. Like, get optimized. I find a lot of people like in their early 20s are optimizing for like the 10 grand of salary. And they will literally choose one opportunity or the other because of like, 10 grand. And 10 grand is 10 grand.
You mean 10 grand more on their salary?
More on their salary.
They'll go for the 70,000 job instead of the
60,000 job, despite the $60,000 job probably having way more opportunity, more learning, better people, but they optimize for just like that. They're just so focused on 10 grand. Hopefully by the time you turn 30 or 40, 10 grand shouldn't matter to you, right? Like it's inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. And what does that really mean? Maybe your apartment's slightly smaller, or maybe you're not going out, as much. But if you're optimizing for learning, that should compound over time into something much bigger. And so I think, try to optimize for that as opposed to other things. Because I think that's really what you're trying to build, is you're trying to build a career for your like 30s or 40s and beyond. And I think in your 20s, all you're trying to do is learn.
I think that's like the same with investing too. It's like sacrifice now for growth later, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, don't spend your money on dumb stuff. It's the same kind of theory concept. Like, don't spend your money on dumb stuff now. You're better off investing it so it can grow, so that when you're 40 or 50, that $5,000 pair of shoes that you would have bought. I don't know what shoes are $5,000, guys. Just saying. But like that $5,000 you saved, you could have invested, and now it's worth, $50,000.
Well, people don't understand I think it's hard for people to conceptualize the power of compounding.
Right.
And hopefully I get these numbers right, but if you take a penny and you double it for 50 days, how much do you think you would have?
$50?
It's like $5 trillion.
What? If you take a penny, what? Say that again. You take a penny,
and you get 2 pennies the next day, 4 pennies the day after, 8 pennies,
yeah,
16 pennies, and you do that for 50 days, you get to $5 trillion.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's insane. I was like, $50?
We'll check that math.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I hope that's the start of our episode. Amazing. What a great way to end this episode. Dan, learned a lot from you to this entire episode, of everything from raising to building to scaling companies to optimizing learning. I think these are all incredible takeaways that our guests and Mina and I took away. So thanks for taking your time to come on the show, man.
It was fun.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe, share, and join the journey of Growth Untold. Don't miss a single nugget. Hit that follow button now on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram.